Alrighty, so for week 8, Learn Together, if you happen to have remembered, I had mentioned before that if you got your Develop It 1 ready to go before we got into the last section, which in this case, the last section is the security, then you could just code along. And I was trying to do that as an incentive, but I've decided to actually make this a requirement of this Learn Together 8. That you have to go ahead and create your directory structure, and I've outlined for the most part the stuff you need to set up that he covered as far as what you need to do to set up your Dev 1. So let me be clear, I'm actually going to show you my structure in the public, but this work that you're going to be doing this week, and it'll be a little awkward in the way that we share it because you really can't share what's in your private repo with everyone. But I want you to complete the work under the private repo. And I want you, and really this was, and several of you missed this, so I wanted to be more clear. The idea is that under your dev, under your private repo, you create another directory called dev1. So just to show you that. So for me, right, this was my dev0. And so I would start by creating another dev_1. And so you can clearly see the two devs here. And then here's where you create this structure. First, right, and I talked about this, right, but before I get there, let me just say, for this Learn Together, I'm not going to make you create all the endpoints that you will ultimately need to create for the final Dev1 code review. But you at least need to create the ones that do create your data and also read, right? And that's what I've said here at the end, is that you need to implement your create and your read endpoints. Now, what you call those endpoints is really up to you, following the standards of what we saw, and I'll show you mine in a minute. But, creating the structure too, doing the source, having the databases, and that's where you'd have your Mongo file, having your models. And so in this case, everyone will have a user, or if you want to call it member, or if you want to call it something else, but it's the idea that this is what we will have as far as a model for when we do security authentication, right? And that's what I was saying here. At least one of them has to be user. And then you'll set up the index file, set up Postman with your new collections, and then create the endpoints, right? So the create for your app. And I've specified here, you need at least 5 fields, and I'll show you what that means. And then you'll need a list to list all the documents in your collection, get one specific document. And this is stuff that he clearly showed us how to do, where you can do a find or find by ID, create a user. And this is pretty easy because it came right out of what we got in this section. And then separate them into different, the routes into different files. And then in your reply here, before I look at my code, then push your code to your private repo, and in the reply here, just write about your work. And you're welcome to, if you want to actually somehow, maybe just publish or index into your public, or maybe create a PDF or something like that. But it's good for you all to see each other's code, so you can get creative with the way you do that. But notice I haven't required it here. Okay, so let me just move over to my editor real quick. And I have, actually, let me just roll this up because I've put this all in my, here I called it email API. And this is where setting up the new directory, right? Please don't get confused because I've already gone over that you put this one in your private one. I'm showing it in the public because I want to give you an example. I have an email model. And actually, this is where I know I'm going to do a little more work because of the way it's saving. And I'm going to give this a little more thought about how I'm going to do it, but at least this is a good first round. And then I have the user. Under here, I have the Mongoose file for just connecting. And then here's where the majority right now. I haven't separated them out to the routes because I wanted to have it all in one easy to read file. So in this case, I have a post, right, to the email. And again, part of this work is setting up. And this is important that you set this up because on your, and this is Postman, because on your final develop it, I'm going to have you, and this is something I'll work on, having now set that up for your API, I'll have you maybe export this so that I can open it up in my space, or maybe invite, something like that. But this is the important part here is you need to, so here's my create user, right? My send email, right? So this is my user, Postman calling that endpoint, passing in the data, and that's my create user. I did add one specifically for read inbox. And so one thing I did differently than he did is he did it off the ID when he went to perform a get to get a specific email or specific task. So in my case, I will do that as well, but I wanted one that I would pass in the email address and then get a list of the, oh yeah, so actually that's something I was playing with. So Jack is actually one that will return, right? So there's all the emails for Jack. But let me just briefly look at the code. So a couple really important things is we've moved now to async functions. So all of my routes and yours as well need to be async. So here's my email, my post route. So what I did is I did a new email, and this is the constructor based on the model. And then I'm pulling off the request.body, and that's where you're setting that those required fields up, not only from the model, but using Postman, doing a try-catch block, doing an await, email save. Then if it was successful, then I send back the email. If not, I catch an error. So that's sending an email. And this is the one I was just playing around with before I started to record. And this is the one, again, it's a little different than his example. And I want you to venture beyond what you've learned, at least one or two examples, and I'll detail that in the dev_1 requirements. But you need to pull off request body email. So no, you don't have to, but that's how I did it, is I pulled when I was doing the get. You normally see this when you're doing a post, but I decided to do it here. Then I went out and did a find, and I said receiver was current email, and I set that by grabbing off the body. Then I did, if there's no email, send back 404. This is not quite working the way I need to play around with this a little bit. And then send back the emails if it was, actually, here, I do need to actually do a return. So, and then send back the emails otherwise, and then the catch. And the rest of these are really stuff you've already seen about the user aspect of this, okay? So again, I'll have my code out there so that you can take a look. So I'm doing this as an encouragement to you to actually get a good start on your Dev 1, okay? All right, so I hope this gets you motivated to do this. I know this was a big section and there's such great content. Like I said, this is really doing this section 11 is really what's preparing you for this last develop it. So it's bringing together everything we've learned so far. And then if you have this completely done, all you're doing that last week, which is really next week, is really just walking through and implementing the authentication. Okay. All right. I'll talk. I hope that makes sense. If you have any questions, please let me know. Otherwise, do feel free to get creative about how to share your index, because that's probably where most of it is. And maybe you can do it before you separate those routes out into individual files, or share them if you want, because you could just create something over in the public to show that. Okay. All right. Have a good one. Talk to you later.